I don't know whether to make jokes about dead characters in this video or not, because when Akainu's involved, you honestly just can't help yourself. Maybe I'm the only sick man that feels that way. But seriously, I really want to educate you guys in this video because there's a lot of rabid animals in the community nowadays that just go around telling people Sabo's gonna fight Akainu and cope. Emphasis on the cope, and they don't really say nothing. They're just saying shit just to say shit. In this video, I will dive into the contentious debate of who will fight Akainu. Will it be Sabo or will it be Luffy? I obviously think it's Luffy from the title, and hopefully by the end of this video, you do too. Hey you, come here. Yes you, one of the thousands of people watching this. Don't run from me. Have a seat. I'm talking into each and every one of your guys' precious souls right now. YouTube shows me a lot of you guys tune in religiously and choose not to sub to the channel. If that's you and you're enjoying the videos, it would mean a lot if this could be the video where you finally give in. If you still choose not to, hopefully I can catch you in the future. Thank you for watching. Firstly, I want to briefly discuss the majority of the reasons Sabo is going to fight Akainu to a lot of people. By the way, before we talk about it, this isn't me saying this doesn't make Sabo likely to clash with Akainu in the future, because I do think it's possible and I do think it would be cool. Sabo defeating Akainu is something I don't agree with. Just want to put this out there for the power scaling people. One of your reasons is that Luffy is way too strong for Akainu, so it's impossible for them to fight. You're stuck in a power scaling matrix and think your power scaling holds any bearing to Oda's pencil. You are far too gone, brother. There's no helping you. You think your power scaling holds any relevancy to how the story will play out. Alright, so before we get into like the three main reasons, here's something I want to show you guys. If my line of thinking doesn't resonate with you and you want to see in manga stuff that really contradicts this fight, here's a collage that I found that pretty much captures it perfectly. Multiple statements and multiple reiterations in the story is constantly telling us that Sabo and the Revolutionary Army have real problems with the world government. There even is some statements that blatantly show us that Sabo shouldn't be looking to get revenge on Akainu. The statement from Sabo right there on the top left saying, "That was the life Ace chose. I won't blame you for what happened." Another statement saying, "Remember, you have a position. You can't go and fight a naval admiral out of a personal grudge." And all these other statements are telling us that the Revolutionary Army's target is the Celestial Dragons. So yeah, this is just something I want to show you guys because there's a bunch of reiterations in the screenshot right here telling us time and time again that the world government, different ranks in the world government, is what their priority is, and it's what they're directly after and what they need to prioritize. I'm aware that the Marines fight for the world government, but I'm just trying to show you guys where their mindset's at. First reason, Sabo wants to get revenge for Ace. My first point in this video will go over this, so we can skip over this for now. Secondly, he inherited Ace's will, so he's going to show that his flames are superior to Akainu's magma. I guess this kind of makes sense. I kind of see the moment you guys are going for, but I don't know what necessarily ties the Devil Fruit to surpass Akainu's. Was it because Ace got bodied by fire and Akainu had that whole speech? I think that's what it is, but I don't know how strong enough of a reason this is, not gonna lie to you. But I guess it would add flavor to the fight. But the biggest problem I see that stands in people's way is that when the Revs fight in the final war, the Revolutionary Army, people believe Luffy will fight Imu and not Akainu, since Imu is the biggest villain and the final villain in One Piece and sits at the top of the world, which I do agree with. I too believe Luffy will fight Imu, but I don't see why we're stuck in this line of thinking and don't think there's possibility for any other fight for Luffy to take place. I want you guys to remember, as much as we think something is very straightforward and likely to happen, he can write his story in a way where things happen that we couldn't account for. But personally, I don't see why he can't fight both in the gigantic war that's going to be the greatest war in One Piece that Oda hyped up as such. I want you guys to remember, Oda is the same writer that writes Luffy taking breaks mid-fight. He has Luffy having lunch breaks in between fights. He has Luffy run away between fights to replenish strength. He writes some arcs where Luffy gets into several fights, like in Whole Cake Island, he fought two extreme diffs with Cracker and Katakuri. Wano, he fought the main villain like 800 times. On top of that, this being the final arc of One Piece potentially, and the greatest war, it's not far-fetched that Luffy could get the opportunity to fight them both, especially if the arc is going to be as long as these typical long-ass Oda arcs, which the final arc of One Piece could possibly be. Even if you want to disagree with that. With all the reasoning and evidence I'm gonna provide, I feel like it's way more safer to bet on the in-story evidence rather than future fight speculation, no matter how likely you believe that fight is going to be. I don't think it's fair to dismiss this fight happening due to how we believe the story will play out. Not saying these reasons aren't a good reason for Sabo to interact and fight with Akainu, because obviously being the brother of the man he killed would make a good fight. But unfortunately with the Sabo and Akainu, those reasons aren't nothing compared to the parallels and evidence for Luffy to fight and defeat Akainu. Some people really don't understand the impact Akainu had on Luffy and the role he plays. Ace died protecting Luffy, not Sabo, and the impact on Ace's death was worse for Luffy, and he also died in Luffy's arms while having a whole emotional moment before he passed away in front of Luffy. Luffy felt the pain of being too weak to save his brother in the war. Even though Sabo has to deal with the pain of not being there for him, Luffy had to deal with the pain of watching him die from the man Akainu himself and not being able to do anything about it. Akainu in Marineford literally made Luffy lose his mind after he killed Ace right in front of him. He was traumatized so bad to the point where he could do nothing but sit there helplessly in shock and had to be escorted. If it wasn't for the help of Jinbei, Marco, and the rest of the Whitebeard pirates, that would have been the end of One Piece. Akainu's impact on Luffy didn't stop there. When Luffy woke up on Amazon Lily and remembered Akainu killed Ace, because Akainu was vividly in his flashbacks, he literally went berserk, smashing everything in pure pain and frustration, to the point where he could have killed himself. Not only did Akainu almost kill Luffy at Marineford, him killing Ace almost caused Luffy to potentially kill himself. But the worst thing that happened, the most impactful and biggest thing that Akainu has ever done to Luffy, which no other person has done or probably ever will, Akainu is the sole person to break Luffy's will. And this is a huge deal. Luffy could be considered the most strong-willed character in the series. Time and time again, Luffy shows us his will and determination is unparalleled and cannot be broken. But one man did. Akainu had Luffy question his whole dream in existence. Luffy diminished himself and his dream as he yelled in agony. The man who said he was going to be the Pirate King every single episode, there was one man who made him really question that. If that's not a setup right there for these guys to have an altercation, I don't know what is. After the 2 years time skip, Luffy has come to terms with the situation with Ace's death. The impact from Akainu still remains though. In Fishman Island, when Jinbei is giving the rundown on the current events in the world, he mentions Blackbeard, who became a Yonko, who we all know is an inevitable fight for Luffy for the One Piece. But Luffy doesn't seem to be worried. He's actually not giving a fuck. He's eating food and zoning out. But when Jinbei mentions Akainu becoming Fleet Admiral after beating out Kiji, that's when Luffy starts to grab his chest, and his scar on his chest starts throbbing, and he says the words Akainu. As we see here, Akainu has a personal connection to Luffy. Majority of the fights Luffy has encountered in all these arcs of One Piece is for the sake of fighting for his friends, fighting for the people of the country. The fight against Akainu would be a fight for himself. Speaking of Luffy's scars, scars are a very important thing in One Piece, and they mean more than you think. Shanks has a scar on his eye due to Blackbeard, which still aches till this day. Obviously, Shanks and Blackbeard have a history together. In this current day, Shanks kinda makes it his duty to stop Blackbeard. They are most likely gonna cross paths in the future and resolve their differences. Some people think Shanks might die. Hey, I think it's possible. Kaido's scar he got from Oden is centered around his whole character. That scar that Oden gave him 20 years ago is something he wishes he could feel the thrill of even 20 years later. Throughout Wano, we see several moments of PTSD that Oden's scar gave Kaido. Oden lives in Kaido's head rent-free. Kaido proceeded to terrorize the man's country and his family. Zoro's scar is from obviously the world's strongest swordsman, the man he will one day surpass. This is no different from Luffy. Akainu is responsible for the scar on Luffy's chest that till this day still throbs. Similar to how Shanks' scar still aches, this is a way to tie Akainu and Luffy together. How Shanks and Blackbeard are tied together, how Oden and Kaido are tied together, and how Mihawk and Zoro are tied together. Oh, I'm not done yet. My bag is endless. Now, let me give you a reason why Akainu would want to fight Luffy. It always blows my mind that people think that Luffy, whose goal is to be the freest man alive, won't fight the literal face of authoritarianism, however you fuck you say that. Authoritarianism itself, whatever that is, right? But I know what the word means. you know, one of the core themes of the entire series, right? When Akainu sees the greatest pirate emerge, you know, the guy he's been reading about in the news for a while, the people he swore to crush, the people he despises the most, why won't he be the one to oppose him? His position makes complete sense for that to be the case. The fleet admiral is the highest rank in the entire marine organization. He sits at the top of the organization that's directly responsible, keyword here, that's directly responsible for capturing and opposing pirates. Why wouldn't he attempt to challenge the greatest one and bring him to absolute justice? See what I did there? He has the clout to fight the Pirate King. I don't care about you power skilling goobers who thinks he gets low diff or mid diff. The former fleet admiral had the clout. The soon to be fleet admiral, who was just an admiral at the time Son Goku in the previous generation, was able to somewhat challenge the Pirate King, which he implied himself. He was someone who fought the Pirate King in his era. I'm not here to talk about Akainu's strength, but if Son Goku was opposing Roger, who says Akainu won't oppose Luffy? Who else in the Marines is qualified to? Akainu's whole character directly opposes Luffy's entire character. Akainu represents the man who despises pirates, who wants to bring them to absolute justice, the man who wants to eradicate every single pirate, the man who hates them the most in the entire series, and then there's Luffy, the man who becomes the greatest one, the man who flips the world on its back, the pirate that will cause Akainu the most possible problems. Akainu represents the highest power of his faction, which is the Marines. Luffy represents the highest power of his faction, which are the pirates. Them clashing and them fighting is something that has to happen. Here's the last thing I'll say. I'll even tie in recent events of the manga. Spoiler warning for the latest chapter. Oda had Kizaru reunite with the Straw Hats for an amazing callback to Sabo, where Kizaru and the pacifistas massacred the Straw Hats and Luffy. Luffy was too weak to do anything and they got destroyed, as we all remember. Hence why Luffy made it apparent to mention, this isn't Sabo. We've gotten 100 times stronger and it's time to get his get back. This callback happening also makes it likely that Oda could be thinking the same thing with Luffy and Akainu. Luffy was involved in a worse situation, with him being too weak actually resulted in someone he loves dying, while with the Kizaru situation, his crew luckily survived. Since it's been shown to us that Egghead Island is a parallel to the Sabo arc, the greatest war that will take place in One Piece could also be a parallel to Marineford, which was another great war. If Oda was willing to make the Kizaru callback with Sabo to show that they aren't gonna get punked around anymore by these admirals, to show how far they come, he could do that with Akainu and Luffy. Or should I say, he probably will do that with Akainu and Luffy, because this callback would be more monumental and more emotional to the audience, since we know what he put Luffy through. The amount of impact Ace's death had on the One Piece watchers is debatably the biggest thing in One Piece. When you ask someone what was the saddest part about One Piece, they will tell you Ace's death 99% of the time. So Oda, who wants to make an amazing story, wouldn't give up on a moment like this, especially when he tried to tug at our hearts with Kizaru and the Straw Hats reuniting. This time around, Luffy wouldn't be defenseless. This time around, he could show Akainu he's not the same guy who couldn't save his brother, and show him how far he came from back then. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. With all this being said, I think it makes it very likely for Luffy to fight and defeat Akainu. Would I love to see Sabo clash with Akainu at least? I would love to see that. Do I think it's possible? Yes, I do think it's possible. But that fight is just not a fight for Sabo to fight. I think that's definitely a fight that Luffy needs to handle. But yeah guys, that's pretty much it. Let me know what you guys think down below. Let me know if you enjoyed this video, because damn, whew, I felt like I was a professor just now. That's it guys, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.